Yesterday was kind of symbolic, hopefully foreshadowing of the way this series has gone. And let me explain what I mean by that. I think if you recall yesterday, if you were listening at the end of the show, and thank you for doing so, but I had mentioned and let me give a little background here. Inside the studios here, we are obviously on Monument Circle, and we are on the fourth floor of our building. Now, our studio, which is a nice, spacious, state-of-the-art radio studio, but it is, as I call it, it's landlocked. It's in the interior of the building. So we don't have the window overlooking Monument Circle like we once did.
Tell you what, though, Jake, it's the safest room to be in this building, probably.
It was
with
yesterday,
those storms
right?
yesterday, yeah.
Very good point. But we don't know when we're on the air a lot of times what the weather's like outside. And so yesterday at the end of the show, I mentioned that I was supposed to go golfing at 4 o'clock. By the way, golf outing for the Fan coming up August 7th. That's at the Legends Golf Course. You can find all the information at 1075thefan.com. And I got off the air, and I went out, and it was a little warm out, but I mean, it was gorgeous. I pulled out onto Illinois Street, beautiful sunny day, people walking around in shorts. And then I got the text message, which I found humorous, from Dr. White, my high school principal, who went on to become the superintendent in Washington Township and for IPS. And he said, "We're off today, no golf. Chance of rain, looks nasty, we're off." And I thought, well, where was this when we were going to school in 6.5 feet of snow? And we never got snow days with Dr. White. But, hey, I digress. It went from being absolutely gorgeous out to horrific. And it wasn't – we weathered the storm. And once the storm was over with, literally by 6 o'clock again, it was not only nice out, it was pleasant because the temperature had dropped. It was really it ended up being a pretty evening for a lot of it, excluding, and I hope nobody was hurt. There was, Shannon called me and was like, "You've got to get over here and see this tree." We had it had to be, I mean, you saw the video, Eddie. What would you guess, 100-foot tree?
Oh, it was massive. 80 feet, yeah.
I mean, huge but fortunately didn't hit anyone's house when it went down. It came crashing through her back, a walk stair deck that goes down in her backyard. But nonetheless, I digress. The point being, we weathered the storm, and then today it's a pleasant day outside. I hope that's symbolic of the Indiana Pacers in games 4 and 5, and that they've weathered the storm, and you saw it in the forecast. You saw it in the forecast that it was supposed to be tough, and it was going to get a little bit nasty. And in particular, in Game 5 on Monday night, I think everybody anticipated and knew that it was going to get tough and get nasty. Now you come home, it is Game 6. I will admit, it feels different, and I want to change that. It feels different for me. It feels different, I think, for a lot of people, because when we were doing the show after Game 3 and going into Game 4, and like Austin Crosher was on, and I read the message from Shannon about what it would mean to her family if the Pacers would win, and people were calling in, and we were talking about Steve and winning for Steve and the different people of what it would mean. And it really felt like the Pacers, you could see it. When a storm's coming, you can smell the rain coming. When the Pacers were up 2-1 with a game at home, you could, start to smell the brass of that trophy, right? I assume it's brass. I have no idea what the Larry O'Brien trophy is. It's probably gold, but you get the point. And then the storm hit. And it feels a little bit different today because it is Juneteenth. It is a federal holiday.
Sterling silver.
The Larry O'Brien trophy, sterling silver?
Yes. 15.5 pounds.
Isn't it gold in color? I mean, I guess sterling silver can be gold. Is it gold plated?
It has a 24-karat gold overlay.
Gary, gotcha. Okay. But the Juneteenth today, which is clearly a day worth commemorating within American history. I admittedly, I look back now and I think, how was this not a holiday for like the last 100 years? But nonetheless, it is a holiday today. And so as a result of that, and I hope everybody does take a moment to think about and understand the reason why today banks are closed and government offices are closed and many businesses are closed for this federal holiday, Juneteenth. And for that reason, though, downtown is not, coming in, there were not a lot of people walking around downtown. There wasn't a lot of traffic. And you forget, wait a minute, there is a finals game tonight. We need for the city, we need for the fan base, we need everybody to have the same level of combustible energy like we had going into Game 4 when that place was an absolute zoo. It was raucous, it was enthusiastic, it was optimistic, it was upbeat, it was excited. It was all of those things because the Pacers were a win away from putting themselves a win away from an NBA title, and they still are. They win tonight, they go back, and yes, it feels like this huge, daunting task to have to win 2 games, potentially without Tyrese Halliburton, and you win tonight, then you go back to a place that excluding, a second, 0.3 seconds has been a house of horrors for them. In Oklahoma City, we all get it. We all know what the odds are if they go back to Game 7, but you still have odds. You give yourself a shot. You give yourself a chance. Now, what we don't know is whether or not tonight we are going to see Tyrese Halliburton. I have heard it both ways. I've heard people say he is absolutely playing. I've heard people say there's no way he's going to play. I've heard people saying they don't know. I've heard people say they definitely know. They're just not going to say anything. It will be a game time decision. Now, I have my own thoughts. I have my own conclusion I've drawn as to reading tea leaves as to whether or not he's going to go. But it's nothing more than that. So I don't want to be confused into thinking that I'm saying definitively something that's going to happen when I don't know whether it's going to or not. I have my thoughts based on the way things have been presented. But nonetheless, happy Thursday to you. My name is Jake Query. You already heard the voice of Eddie Garrison. It is Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. On this day of game number 6, Tony East going to join us coming up about a little under an hour from now. Tony was there yesterday during the shoot-around. It was not a practice, but a shoot-around. I assume the Pacers probably have a walkthrough or have had one this morning. And they will continue to assess the calf strain and any other potential damage, if you will, or injury to Tyrese Halliburton and whether or not he is able to go tonight. Antonio Davis, who is now, by the way, I don't know if it's president, director, I don't know the exact title. Let me find his exact title today, of the Retired Players Association of the NBA. His title, he is the CEO and president of the National Basketball Retired Players Association. And, of course, a pillar of the Pacers franchise, was not a part of the finals team, but has been very, closely watching what's going on. Look forward to talking to him 2 o'clock today. Also would like to begin today's show by saying Juneteenth, meaning June the 19th. This is the day, of course, of the official nature of, historically speaking, the Emancipation Proclamation and the freedom for slaves in the United States. It is one of those that admittedly when the holiday came about, I thought to myself, I'm a little embarrassed this was not a holiday before, or that I had not thought of that. But I believe 2021 was when this holiday began as a federal holiday. It is also June the 19th. And I mentioned that we celebrated it the other day, but it is my dad's birthday, Eddie. How about a happy birthday to my dad?
Happy birthday to Mr. Query.
That is correct.
Hopefully you get him some baseball cards.
Walking around in his Cubs hat, helping people find cats with baseball cards. Today is my dad's. Now, is it, with a dad, it's okay to say the age, right?
Right. You never say the age of the woman at all, no matter what she is. Sister, mother, aunt, cousin, never. Wife,
What if I told
or
you
in
this,
your
Eddie?
case, your
What-
two mistresses. I don't know which one is which.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
By the way, Shannon accepted my Facebook friend request. I was not shocked to see it came within a minute of sending it. There's a picture on there, and it said Jake's wife. I was like, whoa.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Of who is the picture of?
You and your wife,
For those that don't know,
Emily
so that,
Longnecker.
somehow or another, if you Google my name and wife, Emily Longnecker's picture comes up, and that's become a running gag. That's what we're talking about. My dad, if I told you, Eddie, I'm going to give you a brain teaser. Are you ready?
Okay.
My dad's age today,
Uh-huh.
clearly, it is a 2-digit number. This
11?
This should be very easy here.
10?
This should be very easy. The first number is double the second number.
Really?
So how old is he?
84?
That is correct. My dad's 84th birthday today. Spry as can be. So happy birthday to my dad. Your thoughts, Eddie, on this game number 6 tonight, and we'll begin with this. We're going to go in a 2-part answer. The first is, assuming Tyrese Halliburton goes out and plays, what does Indiana do perhaps to, I'm not going to say protect Tyrese Halliburton, but if they have him on the floor but he is not at 100%, then what would you say they do to kind of make up for or get around that?
Is your dad's name Lloyd, by the way?
It is.
Okay. I thought I remembered that correctly. In terms of getting around it, is that what you asked?
Yes.
I'm not
Masking
entirely
him,
sure.
so to speak.
I'm not entirely sure you can mask him, because if you're Oklahoma City, you're going to try to put him in every action defensively, and you're going to try to hunt him out. I think the more issue that it's going to create with Tyrese not being 100% out there is the ability of him to push the pace, get a quick first step on whomever's defending him to try to get 2 feet in the paint. I think that is where it's going to hurt him the most in terms of the explosiveness and the get off of that calf on that leg. And I don't know how you can mask that offensively just because you rely on him for so much, whether he has the basketball in his hands or not.
If I'm wondering, first off, what his, in terms of rotation, how long he's in and how long he's out. It's interesting. In Game 4, now, do we know when this injury really began to surface?
It was earlier in the series, because if you remember after, I don't remember which game it was, there was the video that Scott Agnes caught of him limping off of the press conference.
Correct. That was after Game 3, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Because in Game 4, there was one of the games.
It was Game 2. It was the game they lost in Oklahoma City
Okay.
because they had the flight to catch.
One of the games, he was on the bench for a peculiar amount of time. And I remember even saying, is Halliburton hurt? Because it just dawned on me. He's been on the bench for a long time. And I think it was Shannon that said, well, he usually sits until the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Okay? And then I looked down, and it was like 7 or 6.5 minutes left he came in. But it just felt like he had been, I remember thinking, like, but it's the finals. Don't you ramp it up a little bit? I mean, I don't mean Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, like, the minutes, your rotational minutes. But the Pacers and their depth has been a key part of, obviously, who and what they are. And there were times also in those games where it felt to me like Oklahoma City was wearing down a bit, and they were not. We thought they were, but they were not, because at the end of Game 4, it was Oklahoma City who had that Game 4. Literally, the last time that we had, this game here, obviously, on Friday night, there were multiple occasions in the second half where everybody in the building was saying, see, look at them. Oklahoma City's getting tired. They're wearing them down. They're getting tired. They're getting tired. And it was like this power of suggestion. Because we had been told so many times how tired Oklahoma City would be getting, and how Cleveland ran out of gas, and how New York ran out of gas, and how Milwaukee ran out of gas. So we just assumed that Oklahoma City right before us was sputtering and running out of gas. And when it didn't happen, and in fact, it was inverted. And it was the Pacers that were the ones that suddenly looked fatigued. But during that, when I looked over and saw Halliburton with extended time on the bench, that's when I started thinking to myself, what they're doing is this is checkmate by Indiana. They've got Halliburton on the bench because they're just wearing down Oklahoma City because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's still out there. Williams is still out there. Lou Dort is still out there. Man, they are falling right into the trap. They are right in the middle of the net. Bring it up, and this is like Lieutenant Dan and Forrest Gump after the storm. Cut that net, and there's shrimp everywhere. But then that's not how it worked out, obviously. And now I wonder retroactively if that wasn't because already they were starting to see that Halliburton was showing those signs. And then clearly in Game 5, when he's over from the floor and was not effective, and I understand. I'm not saying, and I realize that it was easy to misinterpret. But when Stephen A. Smith, I believe it was at halftime, said, I'm glad he's hurt. And then he caught himself, and people were like, see, he doesn't like Tyrese Halliburton. He's rejoicing in his injury. No, again, to repeat, I think, and who am I to defend Stephen A. Smith, right? I mean, the guy wears me out like anybody else. But I think what he was saying, what he clearly was saying was, I'm glad you told me that because I was starting to wonder why he wasn't playing well, and now it makes sense. So I'm glad that you told me that I'm glad we now have a plausible reason because I didn't want to think that this guy clearly was that afraid of the moment because he's not. I don't think Halliburton is afraid of the moment. I don't think Halliburton, he has been inconsistent at times, but in his inconsistency, the thing about him that is the most enigmatic is it is the biggest moments where he has his best moments. And that's why you wonder, like, well, where was that for the rest of the game? Well, who cares? He hit the shot when it mattered. But now let's talk about, Eddie, what happens if he does not go. If, in fact, the Pacers today determine, like if he goes to, he might be able to get together with J&V and get one of those walk boots, buy one, get one. Because J&V, do we have the breaking news sounder by chance? I'll do that again. There we go. J&V yesterday, hurt he doesn't know if it's Achilles yet. Is that right?
TBD. Source is telling me that it's a calf/Achilles injury.
Lower leg injury. He's got a lower leg something going on, right?
According to @GMV1070 on Twitter, it was a basketball sustained injury, and an MRI is needed.
MRI needed?
Yes, and he is in a boot. It's on the right foot.
Okay.
Or right leg, I should say.
It's going around, man.
Quote unquote, I was sprinting the lane on a fast break, so I can live with that. If my bleep ends with an Achilles injury, that's how I want to go.
Okay.
Lillard, Tatum, JMV.
There you go. So maybe he and Halliburton can get a buy one, get one. But what I'm getting at is this. In the event that Halliburton, and I'm not making light of it, but if he has the same fate or either one of them, but where he cannot go tonight, then, Eddie, in your opinion, in your prognostication, in your expectation, who gets the start?
I go back and forth on this because Rick Carlisle likes to have two ball handlers on the floor at all times. And if you put Shepherd out there, Shepherd has arguably been the worst Pacers player on the floor this NBA Finals. He's not really a ball handler. He hasn't shot it great or consistently. He can't really create, so he's just out there standing. And he's been hard. It's been hard for him to defend Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but I think I would probably lean towards Mathurin. I would lean towards Mathurin if it were me, just because they need that extra scoring option.
I would think that's who it's got to be, right?
And try to help alleviate the load off of Nembhard offensively, because if it's all Nembhard having to initiate everything and defend Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I don't know if he can hold up the entire game.
My concern, if it's not Halliburton, if Halliburton does not start, there are two concerns that I have. The first is I don't know with the kind of pressure that Oklahoma City is going to come at, come out with from the get-go whether or not Shepard has the ball handling ability that I want, and that kind of, as I call it, in the car wash, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the best summary of the Oklahoma City Thunder in the playoffs so far has been this. I'm on a group text with all my friends from high school, and there was discussion going on about like game 3 or 4 or whatever. I don't remember which game. And somebody said, like, gosh darn it, it just feels like it's impossible for the Pacers to hold on to the basketball. And Casey Lewis replied and said, especially when you're going up against octopi. And that's exactly right. That's exactly what it feels like. That Jalen Williams kind of looks like an octopus a little bit, right? Doesn't he?
No.
But but like his I don't know, he looks like the one from SpongeBob, but he's a fabulous player. Huh?
Are you saying he looks like Squidward?
Is that his name? I don't watch SpongeBob. I just know that there's a character that, but my point being, they are so long at every position that you have to be extra finite in the way that you are controlling and handling and taking care of the basketball. And I think Ben Shepard is a fine player. I don't know that I consider him a basketball control or ball handling specialist. Not that Benedict Mathurin is. That's my concern with Shepard. My concern with Mathurin is Mathurin oftentimes it is head down, I'm going to the basket, end of story. And that's also of concern a little bit because I think it takes away from the get-go. When you put Mathurin in situations in a substituting pattern, then it's okay because you need instant offense when you plug him in. If you start the game with him right away, I think you are perhaps taking one of the pistons out of your offense that is so reliant on everybody firing at the same time. Mathurin is more of an independent, and there is a time for that. We saw that in Game 3. He saved them in Game 3 because of his ability to be a scoring specialist. But if he is starting the game with that unit, with Miles Turner and with Aaron Nesmith and with Pascal Siakam, he doesn't need to be that scoring specialist. And can he adapt to that? That would be, I'm not going to say a concern, but something that I would be very curious to see off the get-go. But believe it or not, in this Game 6, and the narrative changing a little bit, and the narrative, I just mean the overall, enthusiasm. I've actually seen, I hate to say this, are people bailing on their tickets, Eddie? Are people now, jumping ship and trying to see what they can get money-wise out of it? Because it seems like I've seen a lot more tickets for sale for a lot more affordable prices than when we thought that it was going to be, they were here up 3-2.
Not sure. I haven't really looked, if I'm being completely honest.
So the reason I ask it is because I know that people are a little bit down. Myself, for that matter. I mean, there is an element of, wind out of my sails. I'm not going to deny that. I'm going to do everything I can to create gusts. And I woke up this morning, and actually last night at 3:18, I was looking at the ceiling, and I had one of my epiphanies, and I'm like, I wonder if there could be a voice of reason. I wonder if there could be a whisperer. I wonder if there could be a motivational speech that gets me fired up to know that the Pacers still have a really realistic and good shot in this series. And yes, I know they're only down one game. It's 3-2. They can still go to a Game 7. They'd have to go to Oklahoma City. But it starts with game number 6. And as I was laying there and I couldn't sleep because it was going through my head, and I was looking for hope, and I was looking for purpose, and I was looking for definition of this game. And then I started doom scrolling my phone, and lo and behold, a voice reached out. And a voice said, "It's going to happen, Jake. It's going to happen." And it came from the most unlikely place, and it came from the most unlikely person. And yet, I said, I'm going to run with it. I'm going to buy into what this person's saying, because this is exactly what I needed to hear to get me fired up for Game 6. And I'll let you know the voice that came to me, because we'll play it for you in the middle of the night, but we'll play it for you next. First time in quite some time that I have become superstitious when it comes to sports. It happened to me during Clemson's second national championship run. You know, where I'd say, like, oh, no, I can't wear that sweatshirt. I wore that and they lost to so-and-so or whatever. There is one aspect where I have become superstitious, and I think I'm going to shave before the game tonight. Now, I haven't shaved in like a day, I think, and then I was trying to think about whether or not I was clean-shaven for game number 4, which was not a good result. So I think today, clean-shaven is I'm going.
So you know how you said Jalen Williams looks like Squidward from SpongeBob?
Yeah, kind of.
Dion in the company break room says that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looks like Daffy Duck.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd go there. That feels dangerous. I get it. You know, the two of them combined, to be honest with you, and several people have said this, and I saw that Scottie Pippen now agreed with it. The two of them do have the feel, most importantly, of the pairing of Jordan and Pippen. Different, I realize. I mean, it's ridiculous to equate anybody to Michael Jordan. I understand that. But Gilgeous-Alexander's mid-range game, you know, Jordan didn't have a great outside shot in the early years, but in terms of his ability to slide over and pull up and hit a mid-range, very similar to Gilgeous-Alexander. And then Williams does kind of the Scottie Pippen work, right? In terms of just his wing defense, his ability to play, etc. You know, the two of them are a handful. The thing is, Eddie, there have to be – they got 71 between the two of them. And, you know, so the narrative of, well, you let them get their points and then you shut down everybody else.
When they're getting 70, it's hard to win still.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's a very well put together basketball team. But I was laying there last night and I'm staring at the ceiling and I'm like, okay. I kept going back to those last 4 minutes of game 4 and the PTSD of it all. And I'm like, I don't know. Can they go out and can they win? And then I couldn't sleep. And so I'm staring at the ceiling. This always happens. And I thought, well, I'll look at my phone. And lo and behold, it happened. Just when I needed somebody to speak to me, an optimism, a reason for belief. Just what I needed after seeing the storm that hit yesterday and hoping the Pacers could weather that storm and seeing the power that's out for 100,000 people and trees that were down. And thankfully, I don't believe anybody was hurt or killed. I did not hear that. You don't make light of Mother Nature's, you know, ferocity, I realize. But just when I thought this city needs a pickup, the Game 6, there seems to be like a little bit of air that was taken out of the building. And then lo and behold, as I'm doom scrolling my phone, suddenly it happened. You know when you land on something on your phone and you don't click off fast enough, and so all of a sudden it just starts playing, and you're like, wait a minute, what is this happening? Why all of a sudden am I hearing Kool in the Gang? And then you look down, you're like, oh, it's a commercial on my phone that's playing or whatever it may be. And last night at 3:18 a.m., it was almost like I wondered if I ate too late. I wondered if there was something that with the medication I take before bed, that I take something, did Eddie slip in one of his watermelon gummies? I didn't know what was happening because it was the voice that I least would have expected speaking about my hometown, speaking about all of us, speaking about the people that are going to be at Gamebridge, speaking about game number 6, talking about the Pacers and their chances of going back to Oklahoma City for a game number 7 and trying to speak it into existence. And it came from the least likely place.
I have to say this. This is one of the great basketball environments, the city of Indianapolis. I mean, it's special here. Make no mistake about it. And being in this arena with this basketball fan base and recognizing the power that it has to add that extra level of adrenaline and inspire this basketball team, I can't summarily dismiss. Obviously, they're going to be hampered without the services of Tyrese Halliburton at 100%, but we've been seeing that because in terms of what he's capable of doing, we haven't haven't seen him be his capable self for 4 to 5 games in this series, to be quite honest with you. The only game he's really been impressive has been Game 3. And so you've been dealing with that for the longest time. If you got to this point, it's hard for me to imagine, even with the way Shai Gilgeous and Jalen Williams are looking, and they look absolutely sensational right now as a dynamic duo. It is something special to behold. Both of them are averaging over 30 over the last 3 games in this series, with Williams shooting better than 50% from the field and Shai Gilgeous shooting about 46% from the field. I mean, it's impressive, no doubt. But you're asking me if Indiana can get a game. I believe they can. I believe they win tomorrow night, and they push this to a Game 7.
Stephen A. Smith believes. He's playing solitaire on his phone, and it came to him. The fans, the knowledge of the fans, the enthusiasm, that lifts Indiana to a Game 7. And then in a Game 7, Eddie, who knows, right? All you want is a chance. Let me ask you this. What was the Pacers' most unlikely road win this year?
Probably that game in Minnesota when they didn't have any of their starters.
Good one. And you never thought, right?
And Andrew Nembhard gets ejected in the game.
Yeah, he threw the ball back to Rudy Gobert, right?
Yeah, it was the second technical.
I mean, did you think, no one. That game, we probably were like, oh, yeah, by the way, the Pacers are in, they're on the road tonight. And then the next day, we're like, holy cow. How about that, right? Did anybody think that game, which they won in overtime, that was on March the 17th, that was 1 week after their last back-to-back loss effort until right now. So if you look at it, they were coming off back, they lost 3 in a row, and then they beat Milwaukee, and they won in Philly. Then they lost at Milwaukee and turned around and beat Minnesota, and that kind of jump-started everything. That was on St. Patrick's Day. One game. That one game maybe got things going for them, right? How about at Denver? They went to Denver and won, right? One game. Did anybody think when they went to Denver? Now, granted, Halliburton had 14 assists in that game. And granted, Halliburton had 24 and 11 in the game in Minnesota. And theoretically, in a Game 7, at the very least, you are getting a hobbled Tyrese Halliburton. But still, just put yourself in position for one game. I'm curious whether or not people, feel the same as I. Do people feel like this is just delaying the inevitable, or is there still the belief of let's go, I'm all in, I'm excited, yes, sirs? I mean, it was just a week ago. It was just a week ago when you're walking around town and everybody is like, yes, sirs, go Pacers, let's go, let's go, let's go. And now it's like this, people are just like, I'm not sure. I want your thoughts on that. Eric will lead us off with it. 239-1070, the telephone number. I'm not going to say group therapy, but group discussion on what you anticipate for tonight and what your mindset is. I need the pulse of the city. 239-1070. Tony East coming up in 20. Antonio Davis, 2 o'clock on this Game 6 Thursday edition. Query & Company on the Fan.
You love the summer in Indy, so don't ruin it.
Eddie Garrison, before we get to Eric, Steve, Ray, Brent, John, if you could, please, do you have the breaking news sounder? It is being reported by Shams and ESPN that Tyrese Halliburton will be a go for game number 6, and he will do everything he can tonight to play for his team. Now, how extensively and how aggressively remains to be seen. But as of right now, at this 14 minutes before 1 o'clock on the day of game number 6, it is believed that when the Pacers starting lineup is announced, you will hear wearing O from Iowa State, Tyrese Halliburton, announced for the Pacers. Eric begins our conversation to talk through it. What's up, Eric?
Hey, Jake. How's it going?
The most knowledgeable Pacer listener that we have. It's going. Eric, talk me off the ledge. I feel like the wind's out of my sails for Game 6.
I think they're going to win Game 6. That's what I think. But before that was reported about Tyrese. I really feel like they're going to win Game 6. And what I wanted them to do was rest Tyrese a couple more days and, force a Game 7, and that gives his leg a couple more days to rest, and try to go all in.
But could they win a Game 6 without him?
Well, I think they can. And I just, because you haven't got much from him the last couple games, and in the last game when TJ didn't play that whole fourth quarter except like the last minute 45, I felt like TJ could have been in there and you could have won it. That's no knock on Tyrese, but he's hurt, and I just feel like if you rested him a couple more days, and you're able to force a Game 7, maybe that helps. But, he might only play 10 or 15 minutes tonight, and, that's not a bad thing if that's the way it is, but I don't want to see the same thing happen to him that happened to Kevin Durant.
By the way, Eric, if they win it, now I'm not saying that this is going to happen, okay? But, and I'm assuming that if this takes place that we probably will have some sort of work capacity that I will. I don't know that, though. If it aligns as such that the Pacers have a victory parade, and if it is in such a time frame that I don't have work obligations during it, then I want you and your kids coming down with me and Shannon to the parade. Fair?
I'm all for it. I'm there. We got to win this one.
I know.
We got to win this one.
I like it, Eric. It's one game at a time, right? Eric's speaking sense to me. Jake, calm down. One game at a time. But Eric and I went to a game, man, love him. That dude is Pacers through and through. Shane's up next. Shane, what's up?
Shane.
Oh, sorry, Steve. Sorry. My eyes played a trick on me there. Steve, what's up?
Jake, I am all in for tonight because think about it. 30 other fan bases would love to be in the position that we're in, playing in Game 6 of the NBA Finals with the opportunity to force a Game 7 and win the NBA championship. And you know who I'm most excited for? I'm excited for Mr. Simon, and I look forward to him hosting the trophy up center court in Oklahoma City Sunday night.
All right, Steve, I like it.
Hell yeah.
Let's go. Ray. A ray of sunshine for Game 6. What's up, Ray?
That's me. I'm a ray of sunshine, man. I live by 3 rules: God, family, and Pacers.
Okay. Ray, how long you been a Pacer fan?
Since I was 10 years old, I moved here to Indianapolis from Indianola, Mississippi, and the Pacers was formed in 67. We moved here in 68. And my first thing was we have a pro basketball team. I'm so happy.
So, Ray, here's the thing.
I've been a fan ever since.
Ray, listen, is this the first time you've called the program, Ray?
I called maybe a year ago and got in. I'm a busy guy. I kind of take care of my wife. She has cancer, so I take care of her. I'm kind of busy. But,
Well, Ray, how's your wife doing?
She's doing very well right now. She just had a surgery a month ago that they removed something that helped her walk a lot better. And we're fighting the war,
Do you,
we're-
Ray? Do you have kids in the area? Do you have family in the area?
Oh yeah, all my family's here. My kids they're 40. I got grandkids. I got about 12 grandkids.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
well, first off, Ray, it goes without saying the best to your wife and to you for your efforts with it, right? And
Thank
that
you,
battle.
sir.
I mean,
Thank you very much.
that obviously puts in perspective that Game 6 in reality is fun. It's not life, right? But
Absolutely.
with that,
Absolutely.
I'm going to guess right now, Ray, your 3 all-time favorite Pacers. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Ray's all-time favorite Pacers. I'm going to say your 3 favorite Pacers are Reggie Miller, Roger Brown,
Number 1.
and Freddie Lewis.
You were close. You were very close. Reggie Miller, Roger Brown, and
Mel Daniels. How did I forget Mel Daniels, man? Mel Daniels should have been my number 1. If you ever met Mel Daniels, you're still shaking your hand over it because of the fact that you shake his hand, he breaks it, right?
Oh my goodness, yes he does. I've met George McGinnis, I've met Mel Daniels, I've met Billy Keller. I'm a Pacer fan, man. I love it.
I can tell. All right, so Ray, here's the thing. I give my cell phone number out on the air all the time, right?
Right.
So 2 things. Number 1, in terms of if you need any sort of help, I know you said you got a lot of family in the area, but I keep weird hours and I'm a night owl. So you ever need help with anything that pops up in that, you know how to get a hold of me, number 1. And then number 2,
Thank you.
if the Pacers win it, you and I are going out for lunch and we're going to sell it. Well, I don't know about lunch because I'm 12 to 3, I'm in here, but we're going to go out at some point somewhere. We're going to go to Chicago's Pizza, sit down, have a pizza, and celebrate. All right?
Man, I hear you talking about Chicago pieces all the time, and I told my wife, I said, we need to get there one day.
I'll
Did you
deliver
get
it to
there?
you, Ray. You send me your number, I'll deliver you a pizza. You've earned it. I will deliver you a pizza.
Alrighty.
You've earned it for Game 7. If they go to Game 7, I'll deliver it, Ray. Just send me a text and we'll get it done. I appreciate it. And I appreciate
317-523-9288.
That's right. 317 Ray 523-9288. Ray just sounds like a cool guy to hang out with.
Kind of like me.
Okay. John is up next. John, how are you?
Jake Query, how are you, my friend?
You know, I can't complain.
Me and my friends just finished lunch at the world-famous Chatham Taps and Fishers, the world's best fish and chips.
It is a good place. I like it up there. They got Smittix on draft. Anytime you got Smittix on draft, I'm all for it.
That is true. That is true. We are excited, and man, ever since Indy 500 and the Pacers, then we got the Brickyard and the Colt. Man, it's just been an exciting time in Indy. But we were discussing everything, like how many minutes will Halliburton get if he's not hot. But, we talked about everything. But you know what the general consensus was when we finished up that awesome lunch? We're all concerned about how Scott Foster, the extender, will call the game.
Well, now, let me ask you this. Is he working tonight?
No.
See, that's the
Oh,
problem.
he's off tonight.
See, John, they need him out there, right?
It's Zach Zarba. I can't remember who the other 2 are.
Well, all of my friends, we both agreed, we all agreed that it was, they've been pretty fair, but the last 2 games, Foster has thrown some ticky-tack stuff at the Pacers and let the Thunder get away with something. So tonight, if Foster's not there, then I think it'll be a fair game, and I think the Pacers will win.
Well,
But you gotta
listen,
admit-
John, there are people that, and I appreciate the call, there are people that think that Foster needed to be out there because he's the extender and he extends the series, and that means it goes 7.
It's
But-
Zach Zarba, Tony Burrows, and David Guthrie.
Okay. I just know this. I know that at the last game where we were in the restaurant before the game, and a guy walked up to Shannon and said, I just wanted to come up and say hi because nobody screamed at me more over the course of 30 years than you. And he walked off, and I said, what was that all about? And it turns out it was a retired official. So I was like, were you a maniac in your early days? Brent, what's up?
Yeah, Jake, what's up? I just wanted to call in and say a couple of things, man. I'm trying to get my headspace right, and so I'm on my way to Working Man's Friend for the best cheeseburger in the city.
Get a
And
schooner
a
while you're
schooner-
there. Yep.
Schooner a beer, man. I'm getting my mind right. Hey, I really like the analogy when you were talking about the weather. I've thought about this whole series. I often talk about think about the concept of pathetic fallacy. That's when you assign feelings, emotions to, inanimate objects, like the weather. Like in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, man, the night before, he was he was stabbed by the conspirators. It was thundering and lightning. So I love that. Love that analogy, man. I'm rolling with that. Hey, a couple things. I wanted to shout out you guys, you and JMV and JJ, Kristen Airy, everybody with the local Pacers coverage have done such a good job on this playoff run. It's the only source for this kind of information. You guys done an exceptional job. I hope tonight the Pacers do a couple things, man. Control the controllables, take care of the ball, and take care of what's in between their ears, man. They got to get in the right mindset. And I want to see him show up tonight with some badass. You know what I'm saying? I want to see some attitude and some scrap, and I am not deflated at all. It's happening tonight. Game 6 is us, and then we roll on to Game 7. Go Pacers, man.
Brent, before we let you go, can I get you to do one? And I appreciate all of that. I certainly appreciate your kind words. I hope you hope you have a fabulous lunch. I like the enthusiasm. Can I just get you, for the sake of and hopefully Eddie's rolling the machine, can I just get you to say, I'm Brent, and I liked one of Jake's analogies? Can I get you to say that by any chance?
I'm on it. Are you ready? Here it comes.
Here we go. Okay.
My name is Brent, and I really liked one of Jake's analogies.
Yes!
Oh, shoot.
There's a first for everything.
I forgot to press record.
Brent, enjoy the promo.
Oh, man!
Brent, I appreciate it, man. Have a good lunch. Enjoy the game, all right?
Word up. Thank you.
All right, he's going out west for lunch. We're going out east. Tony East next. Game 6 tonight, Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Everything shifts. I've said it 1,000 times. Funny thing about that Steve Nash quote is so true. When you're coming off losses in an NBA playoff series, you feel like you're never going to win another game. Remember in A Season on the Brink? In the book A Season on the Brink, there's the photo of Bob Knight crouched down at the basket, and he's got his fingertips on either side of his nose, and he's staring at the floor, and the quote just says, "Will we ever win another game?" And that's what it feels like when you're coming off back-to-back losses in an NBA playoff series. But when you win, you are darn near invincible. And the Pacers tonight, if they win, can have that feeling going back to Oklahoma City for a game number 7. What we now not know, I'm not going to say that we know this, but what has been reported is that Tyrese Halliburton will give it a go tonight. I don't think that is a surprise. Question to me, which we won't know until the game begins, is giving it a go is one thing, but effectiveness or longevity within the game is another. Joining us now on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line from Forbes, Locked On Pacers, and a regular on this program, which we are grateful, Tony East joins us. Tony, we'll begin with that. I don't think that seeing that Tyrese Halliburton is intending to play tonight is a surprise. Question becomes just how much can he play? Let's begin with this. Let us say that Halliburton goes out there and it is clear that he is limited and they need more. Rick Carlisle then goes to what in terms of rotation if he has to go to it early?
Yeah, I'm not even sure what the right way to think about this is, because it's not even about how much he can play. It's what percentage of him is he anyway?
Correct.
Because, right, and I know you're hinting at that anyway, but, if he's 80% of Tyrese Halliburton, that was basically what was there in Game 5, and they had him off the ball, right? He was in the corners, and Lou Dort was guarding him, and they had a game plan that they had prep before that game, but they didn't know he would be hurt going into it. Right now, things are going to be different on the Thunder side, too, in terms of how they guard guys with who. So, assuming he plays, which, given yesterday we saw him in a starter's jersey at practice and the way he's talked about playing through it if he can, that was my assumption anyway. But now, more reporting suggests that that'll happen. I think that Andrew Nembhard's the key to this. He's got to be that guy that we saw in the conference finals last year, right? That was something. I think people forgot about that because it didn't really repeat at all, but man, they had no Tyrese for those games at home against the Celtics, and Nembhard was balling. He was awesome in those games. He was initiating against the best defense in the league last year in that Celtics team and was being guarded by Drew Holiday and was no problem, I'm just going to get to the rim whenever I want. It's not easy to do that against the Thunder, but he's got to be awesome. And then strategically or stylistically, man, they might have to play the Nembhard-McConnell combo more often, just get it. They love those 2-point guard looks. They always try to do 2 of them. And often it's Halliburton plus another one. I think it'll be key to maximize that Nembhard-McConnell combo, get as much rim pressure as you can tonight because it's going to be harder to generate threes, right? Halliburton is a master at getting them for himself and for others. Their offense is really predicated on his pressure and then how that gets shots for other players or switches for other guys. And without that, they're going to need a ton of drives. They're going to need a ton of paint pressure. Matherin's going to have to be awesome. But I think those 2-point guard groups with Nembhard and McConnell will be massive.
Tony, I want to go and look at the other side for a second because we haven't done that. Certainly I have not. I'm guilty of not having done this enough. And that is, we talk so much about, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams are a very dynamic duo.
Yeah.
And so you look at that and you go, okay, they got 71 points. What can you do? Give me an area. If we were doing a sports talk radio show right now in Oklahoma City and we were covering the Thunder, is there a player or two that has actually underperformed for the Thunder? And if you're the Pacers, that gives you even more pause because you think, okay, we know where we are if those the two-headed monster is balling, but we've got to make sure that we still limit B, C, C, D, and E. Are there any players for Oklahoma City that have so far underperformed with consistency in this series?
Honestly, not a ton. I think consistency is a key part of this question, right? Because they've had a lot of players who are good. Chet Holmgren's considered a big 3 with their young core, right? Pretty often by OKC standards. And he hasn't really been so awesome. He had 20 points, and I think it was Game 3, the one that the Thunder lost.
He had 15 boards in one of them, right?
Yeah, he's been like good at things. His defense won them game 4 at the end of that, but he's the one that I guess you could count this as his inconsistency, right? He was very quiet in game 1. He was 6 for 15 in that game. He had 20 points. Now that I'm looking at it, he's the one that I think like could change things if they get this 5-out stuff rolling. Like he took 6 threes that game. He missed all of them. If he makes any of those, that's a much different game. He can be a lot more threatening. He's kind of a mismatch nightmare that doesn't let you switch as much, especially on a 5-out team. But he's kind of the only one. Like Dort's had games where he's made threes. Cason Wallace is just out there to defend. Caruso's been awesome. Hartenstein's hit the glass. Wiggins has had his one game per series where he just goes crazy and the Thunder win. That was game 2. And they haven't really played anyone else with a ton of consistency. Sometimes Isaiah Joe plays. Kenrich Williams is doing exactly what they hope he does. So they're kind of getting exactly what they get from everybody all the time, which is why they're so good. Like they have so many guys who can fit in to their style defensively and then MVP, and Jalen Williams stepping up has made it so they can get to 120 very easily, which I think that's the bigger problem defensively for the Pacers, is stopping him if they can. That's not easy to do. Regardless, the only guy that I think has maybe not quite met the offensive mark you'd expect for OKC is Chet Holmgren, and he has at times, but it's just kind of been up and down in a way that has benefited the Pacers to me. But, if Halliburton's limited, like that's the side of the ball that honestly I might be more worried about as the Pacers. Like if they can target him and put him in actions with Dort as a screener or with whoever as a screener, that's, I think, going to be something scary for the Pacers to deal with.
But don't you with Halliburton, okay? I mentioned this yesterday, and I want you to tell me if you feel free to disagree. Going into it, like yesterday, I was saying, it's in the Pacers' best interest to keep everybody in the dark as to Halliburton's availability and effectiveness. Because why give Oklahoma City any more clarity on what they're going to see? And I realize Oklahoma City's like, hey, we're just going to play our game. I mean, it doesn't matter to us. But yet, if there's a 1,000th of a percentage chance of an advantage, you're going to take it. And so if he is they may know full well, Tony, my point here circuitously is this. The Pacers may full well know that Tyrese Halliburton is not going to be able to be effective, but his presence can be effective, at least in the short term to get things started. You agree with that?
I do agree with that, and that happened in Game 5, right? And that's why I said it was important that they didn't know before the game, and what you're implying is true because, like, it's the third quarter of the game, and we can tell already at this point that Tyrese Halliburton's hurt, right? He's been reaching for the calf all game. T.J. McConnell subbed him out with 2 minutes to go until halftime for some reason, right? Like, he can't cut back to the three-point line when he gets in the paint. Like, it's obvious. We can see it. And so when he's on offense, he's in the corner, he's on the wing, whatever. Lou Dort is still all over him, right? Lou Dort's on him like, oh, crap, this is Tyrese Halliburton, right? And so if the thought is, like, any second Tyrese Halliburton can get going, they need Dort on him, and they need Dort to be all over him, and that adds spacing to the rest of the floor. Whereas, like, had they known it was a limited version of Tyrese Halliburton or someone who can't do anything, right, then they would sag off of him or put Dort on somebody else or just do something different, right? So that's what I think the key part of what you're saying is knowing that going into the game, like especially if Tyrese starts the game well, right? If he's moving well enough on defense or the Pacers offense is humming to some extent to start the game, then they have to still defend him at a high level or put a good defender on him or just something that requires, attention from the defense in a way that would maybe not be the case if they knew going in that he was limited or out. So it is in the Pacers' best interest to leave as much in the dark as possible with his status, even though, the indications that we've seen and the comments Tyrese Halliburton's made do suggest that he is playing. We'll see what he actually is because he clearly was not 100% last game, but you never know what treatment can do. You never know what the MRI actually revealed.
Tony East is our guest. He's on the Rhine Geist Brewery guest line. Bless you, Eddie Garrison. Tony, Miles Turner.
What that was. I assumed that was me. I assumed that sound was me.
No, it was Eddie. Eddie. Now, oddly enough, and this is one of Eddie Garrison's many skills, he is a singular sneezer, which is very rare. Usually sneezes come in pairs, right? Eddie is singular sneezer, which is with a cranium that size though. There's a ferocity of the sneeze that expels everything in one sneeze instead of two. However, back to speaking of sneezing, Miles Turner had a cold. He was under the weather. He did not get off to a great start in this series, and yet still has yet to really show Miles Turner form. What percent of that is Turner still trying to basically get to 100%, and what percent of that is strictly going against a defense that is unlike anybody else in the league?
Honestly, I think he was – the games I could tell that he was sick was game 3 and 4, where just like the ball's bouncing right in front of him on the ground, and he's just not going for it. You know, he's like positioned well to handle the play right after that, but not handling it there. His processing and effort in game 1 and 2 was good. Like, he was making the right decisions in those games, but that's the only two I noticed that part of it in, and where I noticed that effectiveness. But in terms of his actual offensive impact, I think some stuff he's done well in terms of, you know, after game 2, all this discussion was about getting Tyrese Haliburton going. That's a big Miles Turner thing, like him getting the ball at the top of the key and swinging it side to side and getting all these handoffs going and setting good screens to get Haliburton the ball on the move is a big part of Haliburton getting going, right? And I think you've seen that since game 2. Turner's been good at that. His screens have been better. His ball movement's been better, right? His offensive impact is not as poor as people are saying. However, these shots have to go in, right? They just do. He's so important in this series in that he can shoot, he can space the floor, like that corner 3 hit early in the last game was really important. And like, people considered his Knicks series not particularly effective. He shot 50% or better in every game against New York, right? He played pretty well in that series. He played well, honestly, the entire playoffs. And then in this series, he's had one game at 40% from deep. He was 1 for 2 last game. And then the rest have all been kind of duds. From an efficiency perspective, he's got to make shots, and particularly he's got to make jumpers. He only took 5 shots total last game. That's not enough. I get that his minutes were down, and they were trying different things because of the rebounding battle. They were trying different things because they went smaller in the front court for offensive reasons. I honestly think that's possible they do that again. Like, it's possible there's no Thomas Bryant or Tony Bradley in Game 6. But, you know, if Turner's playing, he's got to be a floor spacing threat against this Thunder team. They're so good at clogging the paint and causing problems as a defensive team that way. They've got to be able to spread that kind of team out, and they haven't been. And some of that's on Turner hitting shots and being more efficient, and he just hasn't in the series. And I think he knows it. He's had a great playoff. Like, I think there should be trust that in these kind of games he can do this. He just did it the series right before this, but it hasn't happened yet in this round. And obviously with Game 6, they really, really need him to make shots and pull Chet away from the basket a little bit and just be another threat for the Thunder to pay attention to, because he really hasn't been since Game 1 of the series.
Tony, I've got a reverse psychology question for you, okay?
Oh, boy, okay. Yeah.
Forever, we touted the fact, we were proud of the fact, we were impressed by the fact that the Pacers, it had been since March 10th that they had lost back-to-back games. And that was a symbol of their mettle, okay? They now have lost back-to-back games. Is there any chance that actually is that streak that we were so proud of and was such a good thing is actually detrimental because it's been that long since they've had to deal with that, and thus it's in their psyche?
Yeah, it is certainly something to think about that. Their superpower has been adjusting, right? Like, that's what I've always kind of interpreted that to be, is that they lose, especially in the playoffs, right? Like, in the regular season, they closed it strong and they didn't lose back-to-back games. They're winning all these clutch games. That's one thing, but like in the playoffs to not do it, the reason that was so impressive and the reason we all talked about it so much is they were adjusting so well. Like, they'd have this big problem, they'd lose a game, they'd hit the film room, they'd figure it out, they'd come out and they'd win. That's a good thing in a series when you're playing the same team over and over. And so from a psyche perspective, you wonder, now that they're playing, you know, the same team again, it's like, man, we just tried to adjust and we couldn't do it. I think it'd be very easy for them to point to, you know, Haliburton's injury as a reason that, you know, any sort of adjustments they had maybe didn't work in the last game. And they were down 2 in the fourth quarter. Like, it's not like they were so bad in that game. They obviously closed it quite poorly to lose by 11. But, you know, I do wonder if that's in their head a little bit, just that, oh, finally, like, a team stopped our adjustments from being a superpower. And to the Thunder's credit, like, they're very good at this too. They've only lost back-to-back games, I think, once all season and never at home, right? They're very good at the exact same thing. Mark Daigneault's a heck of a coach. But, yeah, you got to think that that's the case. At the same time, though, like, man, I think at this exact moment, like, there's not really a mentality question to me. Like, if someone comes out in this game and just isn't, like, balls to the wall for 48 minutes, you know, that says everything about them, right? Like, it's not even about adjustments or, like, how you're feeling after losing 2 games in a row. Like, it's the finals. You're 2 games away from a title. Like, anyone not at peak capacity or focus, like, that's very revealing. I asked Miles Turner about this yesterday because – I don't know if I'm sure you do. Last year, they were down 0-3 to Boston, and Rick Carlisle did this impassioned speech to us about how, like, he's trying to use that as a motivator, that there would be a trophy presentation on their court if they lost the game. And, like, that's the same scenario they're facing tonight. And I asked Miles, like, is that a thing that Rick's brought up? And he's like, yeah, but honestly, like, we shouldn't need our coach to be motivating us on this stage, right? Like, it's the freaking finals. Like, we've got to have that ourselves. And I found that to be one incredibly true and two very revealing of a mindset that the whole team has to take. So on one hand, yes, I think it's got to be deflating that a team that's superpower has been adjusting and hitting the clipboard and coming out and winning. Didn't have that happen for the first time. On the other hand, I think they know that it's all about their innate, ability to fire back, and that's what tonight will be about.
Tony, what version of Benedict Mathurin do we see tonight?
Man, great question. It's funny to talk to him yesterday because he was similar to Miles in that he took that tone of, man, like if you can't have this stage like be big for you, what are we doing? On the other hand, I asked him like, Ben, this, he didn't play last year in the playoffs, right? So like this is his first time ever facing elimination, and I asked him about that, like, hey, does this feel different to you? He said, nope, no, it does not, right? So he's got this stoic, hard demeanor all the time, right? And so I'll be very curious what that looks like in terms of play because he's held that demeanor this whole series, and in one game it led to 27 points and him being a hero of a victory, and another game it led to, 4 points and him looking like he's, you don't even notice him on the offensive end. So they need the good version from game 3, certainly. He's been one of the few guys who against any defender on this OKC team can actually make them react with penetration, but he's driving into crowds a lot, which is something the Pacers don't like, and he made shots through that or made passes through that in game 3. That's the version they need, is for him to be that guy tonight, one that's making a defense react and then making plays that punish those reactions, and not the guy that is driving into crowds and burping up tough shots or turning it over. I know he is capable of that, but it hasn't come all the time for one reason or another. It's on the Pacers to bend their abilities to help him, especially if Tyrese Halliburton's limited. He's got to be great. What version do they get? It's hard to read him because he's so similar all the time, and I think in some ways that's good, and I think in this stage they need that to lead to something good.
Are there T-shirts tonight?
I believe so, yeah. There's the gold.
Have we seen the design of the T-shirts, Eddie? Usually
yes, sirs.
We've already done that one.
It's a different organizational letters.
What, like it's C-Rex? What do you mean it's a different organization of letters? I mean, is this
before
like
it was just like printed
is it
on
gold,
straight?
Are we doing gold dyslexia? What are we doing here? So you're saying it's a different font?
Yeah, different font. Yeah.
They should do a Why Not Indiana, but they don't have the trademark for it. I think is the problem there, right? No, what was that, Tony? What was that?
Just Why Not Indiana? I don't like that very much.
Oh.
Excuse
have
me?
Have I done something wrong?
I trademarked Why Not Indiana.
Did you really?
Yes. Not just for the Pacers, just as a slogan to be used statewide, whether it be IU, whether it be the state, whether it has endless possibilities. Think about it, Tony.
You could say that about any state or place, though, right?
Correct, but does that mean that anybody else was smart enough to trademark it for their state? Listen,
No.
Tony, think about this, okay? I want you to tell me. Think about a big corporation. Just think off the top of your head about a big corporation, right?
Okay, I'm on it.
Okay, that corporation is based where?
I don't actually know where they're.
Let's say they're based. Okay, let's say they're
Think
based.
of a new one.
We'll go with the NCAA. The NCAA was based in Kansas City, right? And then they were thinking about moving their headquarters. And there was discussion, or like Amazon was talking about like where they were going to do this big hub or whatever else. And so you say, look, I realize that you're looking for a place to move. Would you like a place where people are friendly? Would you like a place with great tax structure and good education? Why not Indiana? And then boom, now pure Michigan, right? Don't mess with Texas. Why not Indiana? And then it parlayed into people are talking about who's going to win the East. Why not Indiana? Tell me why Indiana can't. And then they beat Milwaukee and they go up against Cleveland. And I'm like, I know Cleveland's number 1 seed, but why not Indiana? And then bada boom, they beat Cleveland, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Weep if you must, but when you see the T-shirts, tip the cap. That's all I ask.
Well, I don't really care for yes sirs either. So I suppose I will give you that. I prefer it to yes sirs.
Yeah, yes sirs is a little. I'm not a fan of yes sirs having nothing to do with that. Now I thought blue collar gold swagger was a pretty good one. That was decent, right?
That was a very good one. Yes.
I will say this: all of it at this point in the state of Indiana.
Gold Don't Quit was decent too.
I don't remember that one. I don't remember
last
that one.
year.
See, I don't remember that one, so it didn't work. Why not Indiana? Catchy.
Sure,
you don't forget why not Indiana. Now, here's the other thing, okay? Like with all of these slogans, And you can poo-poo the why not Indiana, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not asking you to totally get
No,
on board.
I'm poo-pooing you personally, Jake. That's what's going on.
Which is fine. Listen, which is fine. I would be more than happy to have the discussion with you, but like Jerry with the checks from the Super Terrific Happy Hour, I've got all kinds of 15-cent checks rolling in that I got to sign, okay? Now, with that all said, the bottom line is this. Ever since Colts Forged came out, everything was on the table, and anything you come up with, it is impossible to be the worst slogan in the history of Indiana because that's already been taken with Colts Forged, right? Do you remember the Colts Forged campaign? I don't think anybody knew what was going on there.
That was not great.
No, to this day, no one knows what that was,
No,
right?
That's why not Indiana, because Colts Forged exists here and nowhere else, right?
That's exactly right. I'm telling you, the why not Indiana that's what it's all about, right?
Your pitch made it better. Yes,
this from Mark Dykton. Jake, I'm still waiting on my Why Not Indiana T-shirt. I have it for you, Mark. I got it. See, ask and you shall receive. I've got a couple of them to hand out, and guess who doesn't get one? They're going north, south, and west, but not to east. I can tell you that.
Oh my goodness,
Tony. Okay, no. In all seriousness, though, let's get back to this. In conclusion, tonight, if my worry is this, and I don't mean this to be pessimistic or whatever else, but it feels to me, and I understand it, it does feel, between the fact that a lot of people are off today, there's not a lot of people downtown, you don't have the super hype buzz machine that you had for games 3 and 4 that were here, of everybody being hyped and pumped and amped and everything else, and the wind is out of the sails a little bit. The Pacers do what coming out of the gate, if anything different, to be able to just say, we're still here and we're not going away? We need to see what happened right out of the box.
Ball movement, speed with player movement. Be themselves, right? That's what I've said basically every time they've played bad in the playoffs or had a moment of whatever this is, questioning of their ability in the playoffs. When they play like themselves, even when Halliburton's on the floor, when they play fast, when they get in the paint, when they move the ball, when they play with each other, they're still very good. Their offense can still be very good. They have great shooters. Right, that's how you got to start the game. Playing fast, getting enough stops to get in transition, hit the glass. All the little things that they stunk at in Game 5, if they focus on those things and play fast, they'll look pretty good to start the game. But they've got to do that for 48 minutes. And this is new. Like, yes, they lost in 2000 in this game, but that was on the road. Like, this is a home game back against the wall in the finals. No one's ever seen this before. I'm dying to see how it goes.
You know, I'm not going to lie to you. When you said ball movement, I thought you said bowel movement, and I thought to myself, that's what we saw in Game 5, right? We don't want to see that in Game 6. All right, Tony, why not Indiana, man? We appreciate it as always.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Tony East, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. Again, if you're just joining us, Stephen A. Smith, of all people, came out and said he thinks the Pacers are going to win tonight. He thinks the Pacers are going to win tonight, and guess why? Guess why he thinks that?
Is that a good or a bad thing is the question.
I think it's a good thing, and the reason why is because of the reason, and it has to do with everybody in the company. We'll explain next. was sitting and I was saying to myself, I want so badly, and I've said this repeatedly, I'm willing to put all of my professionalism, objectivity, whatever. I put it all to bed for this series. I just did. And maybe I would not have done that as a younger person. Maybe it's defies my professional obligation. I don't know. But it's the NBA Finals, and I just know I never thought I would see, truthfully, I had just resigned myself to the fact that I was not going to see a Pacers NBA title. And I know that that's unfair. I mean that is no disrespect to the franchise. I just, the NBA amongst any other sport, baseball probably is in this category now. But, in the NFL, everybody kind of gets their crack at it. In the NBA, you have teams that go through like an era. You get like multiple Heat wins, multiple Spurs wins, multiple Bulls wins. And I just was like, man, I don't know. I've seen the Pacers get to the finals, and I've seen them get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and it's been a brilliant franchise and one that I love everything about it. But I just, once they got this close, I have become so, for the first time, and I guess I should appreciate this and thank the franchise for this. It brought me back to fandom. I think that the job that we have, to an extent, it desensitizes you to fandom because you have to like objectively opine on things and you have to see both angles and et cetera. And it numbs a little bit the senses of sport. It's the one, I've always said, it's the one drawback of this job. We are so fortunate in so many ways to have so many different great aspects and access and things about this job that no one should complain when you do this job about the fact that, for example, I've never tailgated before a Colts game. I've never stayed afterwards and gone to the bars after a Colts game or whatever because when I worked in television, for example, the day was just beginning once the game was over, and you weren't done until like midnight. And you were like, it was like an antiseptic about like the emotion of sport. This series and this run for the Pacers has completely changed that for me. And I'm nervous now, and I'm superstitious, and I'm curious about, should I do this? Should I do that? Et cetera. What should I wear? Should I wear the same thing? The reason I was asking about the shirt, because I'm like, should I wear the one shirt that I wore to one of the games in the New York series or whichever one it was? But I don't know, they lost that game. Well, wait a minute. If I go there and there's a shirt on that, then I put that on, and then that takes care of that, et cetera. Right? There's emotion behind all of it. And last night I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, I was trying to sleep, and I'm like, the Pacers, I feel like they're down and out, but then again, they've got a game 6, and if the fans are there in the crowd, and if Halliburton, will see what happens, and now we know that Halliburton's going to try to give it a go, but how effective is he going to be? And I don't know, but I'm hopeful because gosh, I just want it so badly. And then they would go to game 7 in Oklahoma City on Sunday night, and holy cow, stranger things have happened. They won this year in Minnesota in overtime. They won this year in Denver. Who knows what could happen. It's one game. It's literally, if they win tonight, it's like playing in the Super Bowl. It's one game. Did you ever think the New Orleans Saints would beat the Colts in the Super Bowl? It's one game. Strange things happen. Flukes. Ball bounces a weird way. Whatever. Let's go. So as I was thinking about all of that, and I was getting nervous, and I was thinking, but can they win game 6? Can they win game 6? And I couldn't sleep because of it, and I start scrolling through my phone, and the emotions are going into it. My mind's taking me all these different places, and as it's happening, then I'm scrolling through, and when you land on a certain thing, when you're looking on social media, if you don't get off of it fast enough, it starts playing, and then all of a sudden you're like, what in the world? Like, why am I hearing Billy Idol? And somebody's like, I don't know, there's a music video on my phone. As I was doing that, and as I was worrying about it, and I was stressing about it, and I was staring at the ceiling, and all of those emotions, all of those feelings, all of those thoughts, all of those memories of the Brown Curtain days and Clark Kellogg and the players that I loved, and Steve Stepanovich, and Everett Stevens getting an opportunity, and Stuart Gray and Brooks Steppe and Chuck Person, and then the drafting of Reggie Miller and all of it. Wayman Tisdale. I loved Wayman Tisdale. We got Wayman. All of those things start coming to me, and I start getting excited, and I start getting nervous, and I start wondering. And then as I'm scrolling to try to entertain myself to get back to sleep so that I can dream about all of it, the voice on my phone that I landed on comes to me to calm me, to assure me, to tell me that, in fact, this is within grasp and we, the people of Indianapolis, have say and power within it. And it came from the most unlikely of sources.
I have to say this. This is one of the great basketball environments, the city of Indianapolis. I mean, it's special here. It make no mistake about it. And being in this arena with this basketball fan base and recognizing the power that it has to add that extra level of adrenaline and inspire this basketball team, I can't summarily dismiss. Obviously, they're going to be hampered without the services of Tyrese Halliburton at 100%, but we've been seeing that because in terms of what he's capable of doing, we haven't seen him be his capable self for 4 to 5 games in this series, to be quite honest with you. The only game he's really been impressive has been Game 3. And so you've been dealing with that for the longest time. If you got to this point, it's hard for me to imagine, even with the way Shai Gilgeous and Jalen Williams are looking, and they look absolutely sensational right now as a dynamic duo. It is something special to behold. Both of them are averaging over 30 over the last 3 games in this series, with Williams shooting better than 50% from the field and Shai Gilgeous shooting about 46% from the field. I mean, it's impressive, no doubt. But you're asking me if Indiana can get a game. I believe they can. I believe they win tomorrow night, and they push this to a Game 7.
Stephen A. Smith crediting the people of Indianapolis. Did it finally get to him when he saw that everybody was giving him grief over the solitaire? But Stephen A. Smith, I think there's a lot of truth to what he was saying there, though. It's going to take a lot. Everything's going to have to go perfect tonight. And I worry a little bit. I worry about it because it does feel like, just because, and part of it is because it is a completely understandable, long overdue, and with everything that you look, I mean, today is a holiday for all of the right reasons that it should be. Now, obviously with Juneteenth, the reasons that, I mean that meaning I'm surprised. Once Juneteenth was a holiday, and I saw that it was because of to commemorate the emancipation of slaves. I mean, yes, you would like for there never to have been a situation of people that needed to be emancipated. It's not what I mean. But when I saw that, when that became a holiday in 2021, there was part of me that thought, I'm a little embarrassed that I never thought about the fact my entire life that this should be a holiday. So with great respect, it is a federal holiday today, but there are fewer people downtown as a result of it, and you just don't have, it's not like one of those gorgeous summer Wednesdays like we saw last week where the Pacers are at home and there's all kinds of people down and viewing parties and collections and this massive humanity, and everywhere you go downtown, even though people are going to work, it kind of feels like the last week of school when you're actually just helping the teachers pack up boxes and sign yearbooks, and it feels like this every day is kind of a skip for free day. That's what it felt like for games 3 and 4, certainly Friday, when everybody thought, man, your mind starts racing. If they go up 3-1 and they, if they would have held on for that last 4 minutes, tonight is a chance to hoist the trophy on the floor. And there still is a chance that we will see that, but it would be obviously if Oklahoma City were to win. And then that gets into another conversation that I think we need to have next. And it's one that I hope we don't need to have. But it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark, so we probably need to at least prepare. I'll explain next. this just released. Stephanie White will again not be with the Fever tonight. I say again. I didn't mean that in an indicting fashion. Stephanie White will be away from the team tonight in their game. Eddie, you obviously, now tonight you are not doing the pre- and post-game duties for the Fever.
Not tonight, no.
Because you will be producing the Pacers game, right?
Yes, that is correct.
But in terms of the Fever schedule,
they are in Golden State taking on the Valkyries. It's the first of 3 on the West Coast. Play again on Sunday against Vegas, and then the 3-game road trip ends with the Sparks on, I think, Tuesday.
I do not know the reason definitively for Stephanie White's personal reason departure. I know that previously, and one would naturally assume, unfortunately, that this would be related to that, but it was due to health complications in a long-term health battle of Stephanie White's mother-in-law that she missed games previously. She had returned to the team and now is out for personal reasons. So we certainly wish the best for whatever the personal reasons may be for Stephanie White, and whether or not that is related to the mother of Lisa Salters, who, of course, was on the sidelines for the Pacers Thunder game number 5 in Oklahoma City. We don't know if there is the connection there. Of course, Lisa Salters is, and I don't want to speak out of school here. I don't know if it is wife or simply partner of Stephanie White. I'm not sure the technicality of that. It doesn't bother me or it doesn't affect me either way, other than to say that certainly wish the best for Stephanie White, who I like a great deal, and for Lisa Salters as well, in that personal reason that she is out. Okay, so tonight with game number 6 being between the Pacers and the Thunder, Eddie, the reality is this. I do think the Pacers win tonight. I think they win, and then they force it back to a game 7. I don't want to speak something into some sort of existence, right? But I talked so much about the Pacers winning game 4, and then it didn't happen, that clearly I don't have the ability to talk something into existence. So maybe this is like inappropriate to even bring up, but I am genuinely curious of this, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this. And I want you to tell me, Eddie, if you think maybe it's uncomfortable to even bring up. I don't know. Maybe it's inappropriate. I have no idea. But the reality is, if tonight is one of those nights where all of a sudden Oklahoma City, it's a close game, and then just like in game 4, down the stretch, Oklahoma City starts hitting a couple shots and you get yourself down 2 possessions and you're chasing the Tiger by the tail a little bit and you miss free throws or whatever it might be, and you tighten up and you're like, oh my gosh. If it does come to be that an NBA champion is awarded and crowned tonight on the floor of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, what do you think, Eddie, the reaction of the fan base here would be?
I don't know if there would be many fans in there. In terms of, I don't know, Jake. This isn't a hateable Oklahoma City team, and like they've been the best team in the NBA the entire year.
I know.
It's not like they lost to the Sacramento Kings. They lost to the team who was the overwhelming favorite.
If they were to lose, you're saying, yes.
Yeah, if they were to lose, they would have lost to the team that was the overwhelming favorite entering the series, the overwhelming favorite to win the NBA Finals from the time that the playoffs started. So
yep.
I don't see any reason why there would be any, anything bad happening or anything like that, or booing or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean,
just disappointment,
it
probably.
It would be so hard. Here's the thing.
And there probably a lot of, oh man, what,
I know, totally. I mean, the reality, I hope we don't have to worry about it, okay? But it is my hope this series has shown to the world what the world probably already knew, and that is what basketball means to this state. Basketball in this state means everything going back to the time when our identity as a state was centered, truthfully, around farming, your community, and I'm talking about well before I was around.
Mm-hmm.
But just knowing historically speaking about Indiana and the growth of the state of Indiana. And for whatever reason, this state chose basketball as its passion. Not baseball, not football, not soccer, not volleyball, basketball. And many towns in the state of Indiana put themselves on the map, literally and figuratively, through the accomplishments of their basketball team. And so it became ingrained in all of us as Hoosiers that if you were from Louisville or Milan or, small communities that aren't even Terhune, that aren't even around anymore, that have been consolidated into, Ulitic, into bigger schools. The way that you knew and let people know throughout the state what town you were from was you tried to get a basketball team that then could go into Bedford or go into Evansville or go into Jasper and win a sectional. And then when you did that, when you knocked off the big school and you went beyond the sectional, that all of a sudden everybody now is following. Milan had all of Ripley County following them to Indianapolis because when you knocked a team out, that team then got on your bandwagon, and that's who they followed through the state tournament, from the regionals to the semi-state and et cetera. They followed the team that beat them, and it was like a rule that that's who you rooted for because that meant that your area of the state was getting attention and getting recognized. And that created Hoosier hysteria for the tournament and the love and the passion for high school basketball like we have, documented throughout the history of this state. And that mentality of, I'm from this little town, and my little town is a pretty darn good place to live. We work hard. We get up before sunrise and milk the cow. And, I'm talking back in the day. And we have the commerce in our state where we work hard, and then our basketball team lets people know. There would be no other reason to know about, Rushville, Indiana, except for the fact that we have this basketball team that in 71 won the sectional and stunned everybody and then got to play in the big gym in Kokomo. And that mentality carried over to our professional basketball mindset. It did so for the college standpoint. It's why a lot of people loved Indiana or Purdue or Notre Dame or Butler, because that represented when they'd go to the NCAA tournament, they were representing Indiana. That same mentality of, gosh darn it, we're pretty proud of ourselves. We like it here. And we're not a bad place to be because we come together for the things that are important, and basketball is one of those. And that mentality is the Pacers fan base to a great extent. And we got a chance for the last week and a half, or this run, the last 3 weeks, month, we've gotten a chance to showcase to the world what basketball means to us. And yes, it would be the ultimate disappointment, the ultimate letdown. It will be gut-wrenching to watch somebody else win what was tangibly right there at our fingertips. But back in the day, when a team knocked you out in sectionals, you then pulled for that team because it was that connection that allowed your town to show that they, in fact, are good people with good value. And if, for some reason, Oklahoma City is to win tonight, Indiana has the chance to carry that on by saying, yes, it was rough. Yes, we wanted to win. Yes, this sectional should have been ours. But this team won it, and now we are going to tip our cap and give them a hand because we as people appreciate and respect accomplishment in the game that we love. And I'm hopeful that Indiana will utilize that opportunity as the icing on the cake on this showcase of what it means to be a Hoosier and a Pacer fan. But I'm most hopeful that none of that would apply tonight because the Pacers win and force a Game 7. Antonio Davis, one of the great Pacers and now the president and CEO of the Retired Basketball Players Association, joins us next. Antonio Davis joins the Rick Fox category because I would assume he's a busy guy considering his role as the president and CEO of the National Basketball Players, the retired National Basketball Players Association. But just messaged with him about an hour ago, and he said 2 o'clock Eastern, let's do it. So we will see whether or not he joins us on the program. Pacers tonight, game number 6, taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder in all hopes that they can advance and force a Game 7. And, in fact, joining us now on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line, I think it is very safe to say, I'm going to say top 3. For right now, number 1, but certainly top 3, top 5 most famous and beloved Pacers in franchise history. Antonio Davis joining us. Antonio, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm well. I'm going to go with, like, if you were to list what you believe to be the most beloved players in franchise history, how many do you think? How many are you willing to accept could be ahead of you on that list?
Oh man, in all my humility, I think there's a bunch of guys.
I don't think so. I think it's a real. I'm telling you, like I will tell you this, Antonio. Now, I'm not going to say any names here, okay?
Okay.
But I asked somebody. I'm sitting there at I think it was game 4.
Uh-huh.
And I said, and it was somebody that would know this kind of thing. I mean, somebody with connection to the franchise. And I said, if there was a Game 7 ever to be played here, and you could only have 3 former players sitting at midcourt representing the franchise, what 3 players do you think the franchise would pick? Now, I'm not saying this is who would be picked, but this person thought, and do you want to guess the 3 that they told me?
Reggie Miller, obviously.
Correct. Here's what they said. It would be Reggie and the 2 Davises. And I said that's probably perfectly fitting because you were the muscle for Reggie, right?
Yeah. You know, and let me say this, man. I am so, every time I go back to a Pacer game, man, it brings back so many memories. And I was there last round game, I think it was game 4, and being able to see Reggie and Rick and Dale and Travis and all those guys, man, it just, people don't understand that connection and what that does to you. So I'm super grateful. If that was to happen, I would love to be there sitting with Reggie and Dale. Those 2 guys, you know, meant so much to me in the beginning of playing this game that I loved to play. So I would be extremely excited about that.
Well, you obviously now are still involved in the game. You know, I had just mentioned that in your work with the Retired Basketball Players Association, and you played for 3 franchises. I mean, obviously Toronto, Chicago, and Indiana.
Yeah.
Do you still consider the Pacers as your kind of home franchise?
Oh, yeah. You know, there was so much happened, right? Like Larry Brown giving me an opportunity to come in there and play, and then to be embraced by, you know, a Reggie Miller, a Dale Davis, Mark Jackson that came, and all the rest of Vern Fleming, LaSalle Thompson, like those guys. It was just incredible to have them show me how to be a professional in that league. And so I kind of took that with me, and then to be embraced by fans, right? Like I was coming from, you know, I thought was one of the craziest fan bases and playing overseas in Greece and Italy. And then I get to Indiana, and they take it up a notch, right? They support you in so many different ways on and off the court. So I think I was very blessed to be there.
How much have you, and I assume, I mean, the answer here is going to be a lot, right? If you had to break down for us in this series, Antonio, and in particular a Game 6 tonight, where Indiana now suddenly finds themselves kind of back against the wall. They're in a unique situation. It's been 2 months since they've lost back-to-back games. You were a player. How do you kind of break it down or handicap tonight for Indiana?
You know, it's crazy how you have to kind of silo these games, right? You can't think about the last game other than the things that you have to correct. You have to kind of keep that same mindset as like, hey, every game now could be that last game. So you go out there and you just leave it all on the floor, right? I think I was just having a friendly conversation with with a fan who was talking about the game and Tyler and this and that one, and maybe McCollum should play more and all of that. And I'm like, no, man, you go in there with the same game plan. You force them to beat you. You don't beat yourself. You make plays. You're going to knock down some shots. You're going to miss some shots. But at the end of the day, you have to feel like you played 48 minutes as hard as you can, you left it on the floor, and that day or that night, somebody was just better than you, or you were better than them, which hopefully more times than not, that's the case.
Or they call a 4-point play foul, which is the worst play in the history of sports, and you have nothing to do with it either way, right?
Or that, right? And you have to go through therapy and everything else afterwards, right?
Listen, I think Antonio, I think, and you probably know this story, but Donnie Walsh once said that when he went and left the Pacers and then went to go work for New York, that he moves into his office and he walks down the hall and like blown up on the wall is a picture of the 4-point play, which was the worst, and so Donnie's like, I got to walk past this every single day. And I think even New York knew that it was the worst call in the history of basketball, right?
I tell that same story. I played for the Knicks towards the tail end, and I tell that same story. I made them take it down. Like, there's no way I'm walking down this hall every day and looking at that picture. You got to take that one down. Like,
now,
I'm not doing it.
Did they take it down for you?
Yeah, they took it down.
Well, they put it back up apparently before Donnie got there,
right?
Right?
Of course they put it back up. But, yeah, they definitely took it down during that time, and I was grateful. It was no big deal, but I'm sure they understood.
I forgot you were in New York between Chicago and Toronto. It's interesting when you went to Toronto, and I totally understand this, Antonio. Mm-hmm. At the time, you kind of had outgrown your role in Indiana, and I mean that in a good way, right? I mean, you were in a situation where you were a coveted and desired starting level player in the NBA. Yeah. And you went to the Pacers and said, I would prefer to start somewhere else. And I think, I don't want to tell tales out of school here, but I think they respected that so much out of you that they facilitated for that, and that's how you ended up in Toronto. Do you look back now and have, regret's the wrong word, but do you look back on it now and say, man, I should have stayed for that finals run?
I'm going to say all the time. I often wonder what that would have been like if given the opportunity to stay and play and possibly, go on to win the Eastern Conference Finals and have a chance to play in the finals, which I never did, right? So always thinking about that. But I, again, so much respect for Donnie Walsh and the Pacers organization. I think after that season, I went in, and I think my mindset was just looking into the future and realizing that as a professional basketball player, at that level, unless you are superstar-esque, at perennial superstar Hall of Fame guy, you don't get many opportunities to kind of pick and choose where you want to go. Will you be coveted come free agency and all of that? And I just felt like, from a business perspective, having the opportunity to go to another team where I could start. So once I became a free agent, I could maximize my potential, was just one of those things. But again, looking back, I mean, I questioned the decision, but I had a great time in Toronto. It afforded me the opportunity to, again, start and go deep in the playoffs, get an incredible experience with an incredible team. They were a phenomenal organization, taught me so much, allowed me to grow with them. So I'll be forever grateful to them too.
I can't recall. Antonio Davis is our guest on the Ryan Gush Brewery guest line. I'm certain, obviously, you did. I mean, I know that you obviously played in elimination games in the playoffs because, New York would be one of them that comes to mind on multiple occasions. What's the mindset that Indiana has tonight? In other words, do you know as a player when you're in the game and you're looking at the clock that your back's against the wall, or is it really just another of the 90-plus games that you played in that year and you just kind of go with, like, muscle memory? What's the mindset Indiana sees tonight?
I see, and I can, again, obviously only speak to my experience, but I obviously can talk on it, is that it's not just another game. Like playoffs is a whole different thing anyway. And as you get further into the playoffs, you're really controlling emotions. You're controlling all that's going on. You're trying to stay focused and honed in on the important things without losing sight of the external things. So it is one of those things where I feel like, mentally, emotionally, physically, can you fight that battle of, okay, my back is against the wall because if we lose, I go home. But if I'm able to step up in this moment and play at a high level and not make many mistakes and do the things that I'm supposed to do that got us here, then I can become victorious. I always say that the difference between, I'll just be honest, and Antonio Davis and Reggie Miller. I'm sure if you ask Reggie Miller, he was all, he didn't care about nothing. He was going to win this game in front of us. It didn't matter whether it was game, the first game of the season or game 7, elimination games in the playoffs. He had this mentality that I just have to show up and do what I'm supposed to do, and everything else will take care of itself. So I'm sure that they're fighting that mental balance of showing up and giving their all. But yes, my back is against the wall, and I don't have another game if I don't go out here and win this game.
Antonio, before we go back to talking about the NBA and the work that you're doing now, I wanted to ask you this, and maybe it's appropriate today because today is a federal holiday that recognizes, obviously the African-American experience in the United States.
Yeah.
You played collegiately for a guy that I have always felt is perhaps one of the most underrated coaches in the history of the game, in Don Haskins. And in Texas Western, and thankfully it has gotten its proper due now, Texas Western, in terms of defeating that Adolph Rupp team and bringing an all-black team into the championship game and everything that went into that.
Yeah.
The doors that were opened by Don Haskins and the opportunities he afforded you, I wanted to give you the chance to speak about him and about whether or not you were even aware, perhaps, of the significance he had within race and sports during his coaching tenure.
Oh, man. First of all, thank you so much for asking that question today. And let me start by saying, I thank God for Don Haskins, in so many different ways. A young little skinny kid from Oakland, California, just looking for guidance and looking for purpose. And I never thought that I would have the ability to go on and play professional basketball. I really just was going to college, getting out of Oakland, get a degree, get a great job, live a great life. That was my goal and my purpose at that time. To meet Don Haskins and to hear that story, especially the way he told it, which was, for him, he just did the right thing. I went out, played my 5 best players, and made sure we had a chance to win. And that's all that mattered to him. And it meant so much to me that he stood up with that kind of courage and just did what was right in the moment. And the way I saw him love on his players, even in my recruiting trip, I wanted that. I needed that. And I can remember him always telling me, hey, if you learn how to play defense the way that I'm going to teach you how to play defense, you can play this game as long as you want to. And that's what happened. So I'll be forever grateful for him and the fans at the University of Texas at El Paso. And yes, I understand the meaning of what he was to sport and race and all the doors that he opened for a lot of guys to this day.
Did you understand it at the time of your recruitment, or in other words, or was it not really until you got there?
Right, not the magnitude. Matter of fact, I knew nothing about it till I got on my recruiting trip. I actually remember walking in, and behind him was that picture that they took with all the guys and him, and kind of asking, like, what's the significance of that? And then to have him shake his head and, oh hell, I just played the best players on the team and we won. That's all that really happened.
But here's the thing, Antonio. I never met Don Haskins, right?
Right.
But
right.
doesn't that speak volumes about the fact that he didn't boast of or promote it shows that it came from the right place?
No, it definitely did. I knew when I stepped on the campus who he was, what he was about. It was it was the reason I picked to go to the University of Texas at El Paso was after having a conversation with him. I don't even know if we talked about basketball, to be honest, other than him teaching me how to play defense. He asked me all kind of questions. Did I have siblings, and how was Oakland, and he just went on and on about me and what did I want to do, what did I think, and all my other trips that I went on, it was all about basketball and what they were going to do for me and with basketball and what I could do for them with basketball. So I knew what Don Haskins was all about.
By the way, was Gary Payton from Oakland, or am I making that up?
No, Gary Payton was definitely from Oakland. He used to kick my butt in high school.
I was going to say, because when I think, I'm not going to lie to you, like when I think of that era, I think of, for Oakland, I think of Gary Payton and Too Short. Those are the two things that I think of, right?
And they were the biggest things in Oakland.
I know. I mean, with all due respect to MC Hammer, like Too Short was by far the real deal, right? And then I think about you know, obviously Greg Foster was your teammate as well, but Tim Hardaway, and I remember being terrified as an Indiana fan facing UTEP in '89 in the tournament and hoping Jay Edwards could beat you guys, which did happen, right? But so it's a long time ago, right? All of that. But then you get into the NBA, Antonio, and I wanted you to speak on this. We in Indiana, I grew up in Indiana. Mm-hmm. I have a great pride and passion about being from Indiana. As I've gotten older, I've realized that there are parts of Indiana that come also with the story that maybe we aren't as proud of. But basketball's the thing that binds a lot of people in Indiana.
Yes.
As a player, and now with the pride that people have in the Pacers, with this run, I want to think that people that play for the Pacers organization see that in a familial sense more so than other franchises for which they played. But maybe I just romanticize that because I'm from Indiana. Is there a bond with this franchise that is unique to it versus others within the league?
I would say yes, and for a lot of different reasons. One, and as I learn in my role today, the history behind ABA basketball and the Pacers in the ABA days and joining the NBA and Mel Daniels, who I can't thank him enough, God rest his soul, for what he did for me. I can remember him yelling at me at my college games, "Stop fading away, go towards the basket," So love that man to death. But yeah, I think when you talk about the Pacers franchise, I can remember how it was so different when I went to Toronto. I left the Pacers and, there were the Simons and their families, and you saw kids running around. It just felt like a huge family environment. And then going to Toronto, it was strictly business and data. They set us down and talked about the gate and how we can improve the business and all this other stuff. But basketball was, ingrained basketball, family, we do it together. It's us against the world. Like all that stuff I carry with me today, as a man with my family, as the leader of this organization, as when I ran my businesses, like all that stuck with me. And that's what makes, people great. And that's how you impact and influence others, is by understanding that. So you don't just feel that because you're from Indiana. You feel that because that's the truth.
By the way, there is a part of me deep down that is convinced that Don Haskins and Mel Daniels might have been separated at birth. Like they just see, you know what I mean? Doesn't it seem like those guys probably would have grown up riding horses together and just yelling at one another? You know what I mean?
Yelling.
Yeah.
Especially he's a player, and if they played against each other or any of that, man, they would have just been yelling at each other all the time. I would have loved to see that.
Antonio, in conclusion, take me through your role now as the president and CEO of the National Basketball Retired Players Association and what exactly the organization's mission is and what your day-to-day consists of.
Yeah, well, I walked in here February 1, right before All-Star, and learned very quickly that, our founders, Dave Bing, Dave DeBuscher, Dave Cowens, Archie, I always forget his name, and also Oscar Robinson created this association for what we do today, which is to, add camaraderie after we play, giving us space to connect and stay together. But I think the biggest thing is impacting the communities that we live in and that we grew up in, that we played in. So we have my day-to-day is making sure that those resources, that guidance, these spaces that are needed, that we create, allows our members, which are all former players, Harlem Globetrotter, WNBA, ABA, NBA, regardless of who it is, feels this sense of support and this sense of guidance as they start to navigate and repurpose what they do and how they do it. So it is a huge task at times because, like I said, we have everything from, an ABA player who, maybe didn't make the transition to the NBA, to the NBA player who may have played a couple years, to Hall of Famers, to WNBA players who may have played a little bit, to here, to Harlem Globetrotters, who have played all over the country and all over the world, right? So you're just trying to make sure that you have those resources and you give them that support because they're doing amazing work in our communities and impacting our youth. And I just love it. I love it. I love where we're headed and still trying to build on a lot of things and improve a lot of things. And we're just hoping that people will get behind us as we're trying to impact our communities.
Archie Clark, by the way. Archie Clark was the other founder of the organization.
Love that man. Archie Clark.
Antonio, now will you be here by any chance tonight for Game 6?
I was planning on it, but because of all I just said and walked into this role in our annual meeting and going through some staff changes and all that stuff, I would not. I will be rooting hard in front of my TV with some friends.
Well, I'll tell you what, obviously you know this, that you would always be welcomed back. Next year, if it does go 7 games and it's a home game 7, we'd look for you sitting with Reggie and Dale perhaps. And in addition to that, listen, you're a part of Pacers history because not only were you, and not to bring up the 4-point play, but you also got to witness Patrick Ewing commit 27 fouls in the fourth quarter of Game 7 in 94, and Scottie Pippen commit 37 fouls on Mark Jackson in Game 7 in 98. So, you got a front row seat for all of it, right?
Do we talk about that, right? That's a whole nother segment.
Listen, I'm not saying I'm bitter and resentful by any stretch of the imagination, right? But
listen, I appreciate you, man. This has been awesome. I'll come back again.
Anytime, Antonio. You are always welcome in this city and on these airwaves, and I certainly appreciate it, and a lot of respect for the work that you do and the way that you have been able to do it over the course of your career. Appreciate the time today.
Thank you. Have a blessed day, and go Pacers.
All right, appreciate it. Antonio Davis, of course, one of the most popular players in franchise history. And, yes, it is very easy to look back and wonder what could have happened in 2000 had Antonio been on the roster against Shaq. But, as we talked about with Austin Crosher, I don't know. You could have had 20 Antonio Davises. And, obviously Dale Davis and Rick Smits. Shaq was so dominant in that time. Eric Dampier is another one that they had traded away as a big man for Chris Mullin, who by 2000 was kind of more of a role player, but was a huge part of their run in 98. But I still remember Antonio in 94 in 95, after the 8 points in 8 seconds, 8 points in 9 seconds, and Antonio on ESPN saying, man, I'm shocked. You're shocked. We're all shocked. He just had that easygoing nature about him. Absolute legend for certain. All right, we'll get back into what is going to take place tonight in game number 6 and the big news from the Indiana basketball standpoint of who's in tonight and one who's out tonight. We'll let you know both of it next. Thanks to Antonio Davis for his time today. Always one of the great guys in the Pacers' history. Tyrese Halliburton, it is reported now that he is, and this is not an overly surprising announcement, what I'm about to say, that Tyrese Halliburton is going to give it a go. He is going to at least start the game and try to play through whatever it is that, the calf strain, the severity of it, or the pain level. I don't know that, nor probably will he until he starts the game. I would imagine they will do everything possible to facilitate, to limit that pain, but it is, man, you just want it so badly, right? If they can get it tonight and then you go back for a Game 7, you just want to see what he can do, and maybe there's something to be said for, if you're Oklahoma City, you've got to pay attention to him on the floor, and maybe that does then open up and keep Siakam active, and the other, Turner's obviously going to need a big game. Look, it's a game here tonight, a Game 6, and then if you win that and you go back for a Game 7, maybe Oklahoma City even has the mindset of like, look, we'd probably rather win it at home. I don't think that's the case. I mean, if you've got a chance to get that trophy, you're going for it. But is it in the back of their minds subconsciously, subliminally, like, yeah, we'll kind of go through and see what happens tonight, but if not, we always got the safety valve of going back. Halliburton's going to be dinged up. We'll go back for a Game 7. We're at home. We'll do the trophy there, etc. I don't know. I don't know whether that comes into play, but I want so badly for this place tonight to be raucous and what it normally is, and for people to lift them again. You heard, and I never thought I'd even be mentioning Stephen A. Smith on the radio, but Stephen A. Smith saying, like, look, this place is different. This fan base, I do think Indiana's going to force a Game 7. And I'm sure the New Orleans Saints, I mentioned it earlier, I'm sure the New Orleans Saints probably, didn't it feel in this town, wasn't it an automatic? When you woke up the morning of the Super Bowl between the Colts and the Saints, like, here we go again. Another Lombardi. Let's go. And did you think the onside kick was coming? Did you really think Tracy Porter was going to pick off that pass? Anything can happen. Anything's possible, Kevin Garnett once said. It's true. It's true. And you want to push all in and say, let's go, a Game 7. But Tyrese Halliburton going to give it a go tonight. Stephanie White will not be with the Indiana Fever tonight. She, again, will miss their game tonight for personal reasons. Previously, those personal reasons were a health complication of her mother-in-law, and I would assume that is, unfortunately, the reason tonight as well. I don't think the reason was definitively given. It's not really our business when it's a personal reason, but either way, Stephanie White, who I like a great deal, you wish the best for Stephanie and her family as well in that situation. The Fever starting out on the West Coast tonight. Eddie Garrison will not be doing the pre- and post-game for that because he'll be working the Pacers game, but Nathaniel, don't call me Atticus Finch, will be filling in, correct?
That is right. It's the first of 4 on the road. I misspoke earlier. They play, obviously, tonight against the Golden State Valkyries, then Sunday against the Aces. That's at 3 o'clock. That'll be here on the Fan. 2:45 pregame. I'll have postgame coverage of that as well. And if there is a Game 7, hopefully there is a Game 7, that will be right here on the Fan as well, and I'll have the producer duties of that. Then they're in Seattle, one of my favorite cities for sure, on Tuesday night, and then they conclude their 4-game West Coast trip on Thursday of next week against the LA Sparks.
Seattle is an awesome city. Tonight with Halliburton, Eddie.
Yep.
What's the over-under you'd put on number of minutes he plays?
I would say the normal workload.
Think so?
34.5.
Okay. I'll go over-under of 29. You going over then, obviously?
Yeah.
I am curious to see just, what – it's so interesting because you would realistically say what? That the difference for a Halliburton is that extra 5%, right? He's not a guy that you look at as a Tim Hardaway first step guy. He's not a guy that you look at who's a player that you think of that just has like an unbelievable burst to the basket.
Ja Morant.
Ja Morant. That's a good one. Like, you don't think of that, right? He doesn't necessarily have the slippery nature of a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but he has very good court vision. And a lot of that court vision is facilitated by him being aggressive early and then the way that he is guarded and then facilitates for everybody else. And that's the thing that you hope that Oklahoma City respects him in that same fashion, where they are, even though they're not sure exactly what he is capable of, that uncertainty. Maybe for Game 7 it becomes a little bit easier for them to figure out what Halliburton doesn't have. But they still don't know entirely. None of us do, if he goes tonight. Hey, Jake, you're going to think I'm lying, but during the Super Bowl versus the Saints halftime show, I had a small thought that the Saints would try an onside kick and immediately said, nah, that's too crazy. Why did you not tell Hank Baskett? Should have let him know. Hey, here's what's coming. Because, and like I said, though, that's what I'm talking about. Just like weird things happen, right? Do you ever use the Ask Grok thing now?
No.
Grok, whatever it is.
I don't even know how to say it.
Somebody sent this to me. They asked Grok, the AI thing, who won Game 6? It replied, the Oklahoma City Thunder won Game 6 of the 2025 NBA Finals against the Indiana Pacers, clinching the series 4-2 and securing their first title in franchise history. The Thunder won Game 6 to clinch the series 4-2, suggesting the Pacers, with or without a fully effective Halliburton, couldn't extend the series. If he played, his role may have been limited, with T.J. McConnell potentially taking on more minutes. Now, is it the first? This is the other thing. Is it the first win? Do the Oklahoma City Thunder, are they going for their first NBA title?
I believe so.
Are they? I'm looking up right now the official website of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay? And if you look on the official website of the Oklahoma City Thunder, I don't know, like, see, it's so hard because I'm on the NBA website of the Thunder, okay? But if you go to, team stat, ownership group, it doesn't have anything there. I want history. I want to see what it says in terms of, like, who's their all-time leading scorer?
I would assume it's Kevin Durant.
Well, but is it? If they list their all-time leading scorer as, I'm trying to think of who, like Jack Sikma or whoever it may be, then do the Thunder include, I know you mentioned earlier you don't think they do they include the Sonics within their history? Because if that's the case, then this would not be, if they were to win it, it's going to be a moot point because the Pacers are going to win, right? But do they themselves include their history of the Seattle Sonics? Okay, if you go on their Wikipedia page, which we know is all-knowing, under history, 1967 to 2008 Seattle Sonics. The Thunder's previous incarnation, the Seattle Sonics, were formed in 67. I would assume, I personally think that they are still connected with the Sonics, but we talked about that yesterday, right? Let's see who their all-time records, basketballreference.com.
That would be Russell Westbrook.
Is the all-time leading scorer?
Mm-hmm.
All-time, okay, I'm on basketballreference.com.
Yep.
All-time leading scorers. Career leaders in scoring. I'm looking for scoring here. Career leaders in games played. Number 1, Gary Payton. So that right there would tell you, right?
Well, that's Basketball Reference. That's not, well.
But again, if they're, they are linking it. So you saw Russell Westbrook under what site?
Most of them. everywhere
Well,
that I've looked.
But I'm saying, is that a
Points, Russell Westbrook, Basketball Reference, he's got 18,859.
okay? But here,
Gary Payton second.
Hold on, I'm looking right now on NBA.com. NBA.com lists the all-time scoring leader of the Oklahoma City Thunder, Russell Westbrook. So that must be right altogether. But their all-time assist leader, Gary Payton, all-time rebound leader, Jack Sikma. So NBA.com considers the Seattle Sonics records as part of the Oklahoma City Thunder history. And in that capacity, this would not be if they were to win it, be it tonight or Game 7, whatever it might be. So in other words, in these finals, the Pacers are the only franchise playing for their first title.
That's still
in
not
the NBA.
That's not correct, though, is it?
What?
Oklahoma City is a different franchise from Seattle. Seattle's just part of the history.
They are not. What I'm saying is, I'm looking right here, Eddie. NBA.com, which is the association.
Yep.
The NBA.com officially lists the Seattle Sonics records as part of the Oklahoma City Thunder records. They have blended the two records together. They list Gary Payton as the all-time assist leader in Oklahoma City Thunder history. They list Jack Sikma as the all-time rebounding leader in Oklahoma City Thunder history. Thus, the games and the accomplishments of the Seattle Sonics, for now, are still listed as those of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the Seattle Sonics won an NBA title. Therefore, according to the NBA.com website, that is part of their history. Now, if Seattle gets an expansion, what happened, for example, with the Cleveland Browns? When the Cleveland Browns got their own franchise expansion.
Okay, so I'm looking at the media guide from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it does not have anyone from Seattle a part of any of their statistics. Their all-time leading scorer entering the year was Russell Westbrook, then Kevin Durant, then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, then Serge Ibaka.
The NBA, though, in looking at the NBA, I mean, the Thunder may not, but the NBA, the association itself, considers the two franchises married together. The parent organization, corporation, considers the records the same. Now, I could see how Oklahoma City would say, yeah, we are just going to, like the Cleveland Browns. When the Baltimore Ravens moved from Cleveland to Baltimore, the Ravens themselves, I don't remember how they did it in the first handful of years until Cleveland got an expansion franchise. But once Cleveland got an expansion, called it the Browns, they then absorbed all of the Browns records and kept that, historically speaking. And I have no idea how that works in terms of if Seattle were to get another team and call it the Sonics, do they then retain those records? But at least according to the NBA, I get it. I get why the Thunder would not like. Now the Colts are a different story because the Colts do recognize the Baltimore Colts, right? Although think about it, Johnny Unitas is not in the Colts Ring of Honor, right?
Nope.
But he's in their record books. If you look at the Colts record, but like Jim Irsay, he had Raymond Berry come out and do a coin flip for them and whatever else. And Jim Irsay would recognize Lenny Moore and Johnny Unitas and those guys, but they are not in the current Colts Ring of Honor. And that's what Baltimore fans have always taken exception with about the Colts move is the fact that the Colts took the Baltimore Colts records with them. And Oklahoma City, there's a lot of resentment with Seattle people for sure. Believe me, nobody in Seattle is claiming Oklahoma City. Don't get me wrong.
And no one in Oklahoma City is claiming Seattle.
Okay, but what I'm saying is the NBA is. The NBA, which is the end-all be-all. Tonight, they are playing for the NBA championship. They're not playing for the Oklahoma City championship. They're playing for the NBA championship. And the National Basketball Association recognizes the Seattle Sonics as part of the history of the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's in Oklahoma City's best interest to not to dismiss that, but the association itself clearly recognizes the Seattle Sonics within that history, or else they would not list Gary Payton as the all-time assist leader in Oklahoma City Thunder history. So I'm going to maintain, of these two teams, there is one, historically speaking, that has no lineage to an NBA title.
I'm going to maintain that neither have won an NBA title.
Okay, and the association would disagree with you. That's all I'm saying. You can say that, but the NBA disagrees with you. And the official archives of the NBA disagree with you. John's up next. We'll see what John thinks. We'll see what J&B thinks when he hobbles in next. Bespoke, by the way, J&V at District Tap downtown. So plenty of time if you were going to the game to swing by the District Tap. I had forgotten he is going to be down there. My apologies. So swing by, have a cold one, Diet Coke perfectly sufficient, and enjoy John getting you set up for this game number 6 tonight.
It's a Mick Ultra Zero.
That stuff's great, by the way. Love it. Mick Ultra and Mick Ultra Zero, both fantastic. Helping out in John's pregame party at District Tap. Eddie, I'm hesitant to make this comparison because I feel like it's unoriginal.
Okay.
But I thought this about a week ago. I might have mentioned it once. And then I thought, now, of course, you have, like, when you think of something and you're like, am I the only one thinking this? And so you can do, like, a Twitter search or whatever else and see. And I don't see a lot of this, but I am curious if anybody else thinks this. Has Kevin Durant entered into the NBA's Aaron Rodgers territory?
Ooh, that's very good comparison.
Like, every year it's like everybody sits around and waits to find out what Kevin Durant's going to do, and then you're like, does it make a difference, though? I mean, he was going to be the final piece to put Phoenix over the top. He was going to be the start of a dynasty in Brooklyn with the Nets. He's a great player, there's no doubt, but
Phoenix's wrongdoing was trading for Bradley Beal.
Yeah, for sure. But how old is Kevin Durant now? He has to be, let me think here. He played a year in Seattle, which was like 07 or 08 his rookie year. So this has to be his 17th or 18th year in the league. He would have been 19 when he's got to be 35 or 36, right?
36.
Yeah, I mean, still a phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong. But with the salary that he's making, is he really a final piece for somebody? We're going to get the last piece of, the last run of Kevin Durant, but we've got to compromise and mortgage our entire future in order to do so for a 2-year window. Okay? It just feels like it's kind of exhausting in terms of like the constant wait for him.
This is from the all-knowing Pat Boylan, Jake. Technically, by definition, the franchise history crosses over from city to city. So what he's been saying is that they've never won a title since moving to OKC. So technically, it would be their second in franchise history. Yes,
that's my point. So as a franchise, it is their second title.
And Oklahoma City can say that they don't count any of the Seattle days or statistics, but they don't get to make that call.
That's
from his
correct.
Understanding.
That's what I said. The association, the NBA, clearly, if you go on the NBA.com, it lists like Gary Payton and Nate McMillan and Sean Kemp in their record books. Jack Sikma, the rest of them.
I wonder if that would all change if there was a team or when there was a team moved back to Seattle.
That's what I said. My assumption is that if a new franchise goes to Seattle, that the Sonics would then absorb the records, take the records back from Oklahoma City.
Would a team have to be labeled as the Sonics?
I would think so, yes. Yes. John is up next. That's what I said with the Cleveland Browns. That's what they did. John's up next. He's at District Tap. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks to Antonio Davis. Thanks to Tony East. And go, 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 go Pacers. Go like hell. And force a Game 7. We'll talk about it either way tomorrow at noon.